Good evening, Nova Nation, and welcome to this week's edition of Top 25 Live. I'm Brendan Garrity.
And I'm Matt McCarthy.
This week, we're going to talk about the past LSU-Alabama game, along with Villanova's second win against UMass this past weekend, and we're going to preview the basketball season. So, about that LSU-Alabama game, was it everything you expected it to be, Matt, or were you a little disappointed about the score?
I mean, the scoring wasn't what we all, or it was what we all expected. Yeah. SEC football is not the flashy type of football that you're going to want to see. If you want to go out there and see a score of 45-44, that you don't want to go to an SEC game. LSU-Alabama did live up to all its hype. I know some analysts don't think that the final score came out the way it should. It went to overtime. It was 1 versus 2. Won it on a field goal. One of the best games I've ever seen, and I'm glad LSU pulled it out.
Yeah, I have to agree. I was pulling for Alabama, I think, a little bit. But in terms of the competition, the atmosphere, definitely everything we expected out of the game of the century, quote-unquote, number 1 versus number 2. Hasn't happened since Ohio State, Michigan in 2006, where that game was a final score of, I believe, 42-38 Ohio State. So it's definitely good to see a low-scoring game. As we know, it was all field goals, but still, in the end, LSU, they capitalized on mistakes. I disagree with some of Alabama's decisions when they threw the ball 3 times in a row instead of running it. But they are still a top 5 team as a season in the rankings. LSU is number 1 now, Oklahoma State's number 2, and Alabama is number 3. Into the football, too, I mentioned Villanova football, second win versus UMass.
Big win.
Very impressed with that win on the road. They won 35-17. Got to watch the highlights. Lots of turnovers created by Villanova. I believe 3 interceptions went to Pitts, I believe. And they just played an overall great defensive game. It's exactly what they needed. Obviously, next week they have the game versus Delaware, where it's just playing for pride pretty much in the trophy. And I think they got a lot of motivation heading into that game. Another week to prepare. The seniors want to end on a high note. I'm definitely seeing Villanova coming out really strong in this game. Different stadium, hopefully electric, a big crowd. So we'll see how that goes. But congratulations to the Villanova football team pulling it out on the road. It's an excellent job. So now we're going to move on to basketball. You said you want to talk about this week is the start of college basketball. The first game tonight is actually Valparaiso in Arizona, number 16 Arizona. But Villanova has some games of their own this week. So.
Yes, Villanova does have 2 big games this week. We have the exhibition game coming up tomorrow against NYIT. So I'm sure a few of us will be out there just to see our team in their first game action, besides playing against each other. We have the Monmouth game, which is going to be our big first regular season game. Big crowd, I'm sure. Although Monmouth isn't one of the best opponents we're going to be playing all season, it's the first time that Nova Nation really gets to show everybody where we're about. So I see a big crowd coming out for that. Top 25 did come out for college basketball. I know what this show is mainly about. Villanova, not surprisingly, not in the top 25. Not in the top 5 of the Big East. The Big East rankings did come out. I think it's very deserved. I know we all want to believe that our team's the best in the nation, but we just didn't have that great of a season last year. Fell apart at the end. Didn't have a great tournament bid. We're probably right in the middle of the pack to the Big East. I see us winning some big games this year, probably exceeding expectations. I hopefully see us in the Sweet 16, but it's tough to look out from our season last year and say that, but I have some faith.
Yeah, I'm actually happy we're not in the top 25. I think that makes the team want to work harder when it comes to the regular season. The first 4 games was against Monmouth. I believe Delaware's in there, LaSalle and Penn. Those games were really a building year. We know this is kind of a building year with a younger team on the floor. But not being in the top 25, it tests the team to say, can you come together, win these games? I personally believe that they'll pull off a few big upsets this year, 1 or 2.
Definitely.
They definitely are the sleeper team. And we know from the Big East tournament, anything can happen. You come one in 5 days.
It's true.
Depending on how you come to play every day, who knows? They do well in the Big East tournament, maybe get a little bit more respect. But I definitely think this team is going to come together more than ever. Absolutely. And, leaders like Malik Waynes and Muftali Aru, I think they're going to mentor the freshmen, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. And hopefully, as you said, maybe go into the tournament, do well, but if not, a couple upsets here and there, I'd be happy enough with that.
Yeah, I see us doing well.
Yeah. So we're going to head into this week. Again, the Monmouth game is this Friday, and the exhibition game tomorrow against NYIT. And now we're going to move to the segment of the show. We're going to talk about some football games for the week. Who's hot, who's not. For my who's hot team in terms of football is Oklahoma State. They played from behind against Kansas State and won 52-45, I believe. It was a really close game, really high energy. I know everybody's looking at LSU, Alabama, but this team has really impressed me. I feel like they haven't got as much attention as they deserved, creeping up into the top 10, even though people sometimes talk about them. But I'm really happy for them being in the top 3 now with LSU and Alabama. They really have worked really hard and they deserve it. Their next game's coming up. I believe they play Kansas, and then they obviously they have another game, and then they got the Oklahoma game, which is always a classic game to watch. I would love to see this team go undefeated, and just kind of it's the ball's in their court pretty much, and I think they can do a really good job. So Oklahoma State's my hot team. I look forward to them keeping it up, because after this weekend they really proved to the nation that they're for real. They deserve to be the number 2 team in the country.
Yes.
Who do you got as your hot team?
My hot team is Penn State Nittany Lions. I know they've been in the news for the past few days for some off-the-field issues, but they have proven themselves on the field. Their offensive line has grown exponentially this year. They're protecting their quarterback very well. They're playing hard-nosed defense, some real Penn State football. Yeah. I mean, they're known as Linebacker U for a reason. They have a few big games coming up, not really any where they can put themselves in that top 5 echelon, but they are ranked right now, I believe they're number 11. Yep. I see them cracking the top 10 by the end of the year. They're hot right now, so hopefully they can win out, prove me right by the end of the year.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I'd have to agree with that. On the other hand, instead of who's hot, we got who's not teams. A lot of teams have been slipping up in the top 25. Who you got as the team that's sort of been disappointing to you this past couple of weeks?
I think it's Kansas State. Kansas State had 2 huge games in these past 2 weeks, and they've just let it fall out of their hands. We talked about them with Oklahoma State. They had that win right at the end of the game, but couldn't get it done when the pressure was on. They've slipped a little bit. I know their rankings haven't really changed that much, but I see them not being really a top 15 team, even though they're right in that area. I don't see them even being a top 25 team. They're slipping a lot for me.
Yeah, it's interesting how they're still, in a decently ranked position, but I have to agree. Besides Kansas State, I got to go with Texas A&M. I've seen a few of their games. They just have been frustrating me lately. Way too many turnovers. The games I've tuned in, their offense is just not in sync. Their defense cannot stop the running game. It just bits and pieces watching. You just learn a lot about a team that has so much talent coming into the season. They had high expectations. Just really disappointing. They got the Texas game coming up, a few other games on their schedule, but I really don't see them finishing up that well. Really a disappointing year for the Aggies. I'd like to see them win a few games, but definitely a team that's let me down for sure. And so we'll see how it goes in the final weeks of the college football season. Speaking of, we had the LSU Alabama game this past week. And so we got another 2 games this week that are also not as hyped up, not as big, but still really important. We're going to start with number 15 Auburn at number 20 Georgia. Who you got for this game?
I have the Bulldogs winning at home. I think Georgia's a tough place to play. Auburn's still on that championship high. I haven't seen them really win any important games this year. They just haven't impressed me overall. Georgia's a very good team, very underrated team. I see them taking it down at home and hopefully getting themselves a bowl bid.
Yeah, playing between the hedges, as they say in Georgia. I have to go with Auburn at this point, just because you said they haven't been really producing that well. They had a couple iffy games this year. In the beginning of the year, they played Utah State and had to come from behind on an onside kick to win. A really, really weird year, and they've kind of fallen below the radar in terms of getting recognition. But I think they'll go in there, a little chip on their shoulder. On the road, it's still an SEC top 25 game. I see Auburn taking it, maybe by a field goal or about 10, or a field goal, or a touchdown. We'll be a close game, classic SEC battle. Nothing like a 9-6 game. I see it up in the 30s to 20 range. It'll be fun to watch. On the other hand, our second choice, we actually agree on this. One of our favorite teams, number 7 Oregon playing at number 4 Stanford. Who do you have for this?
Now, Oregon is one of my favorite teams. Not only their awesome jerseys, but they just have players that you like to love. It's one of those teams where everyone can get behind. They have a great atmosphere down in Oregon, but they are traveling to a very hard place to play in Stanford, and they're playing against the best quarterback in the nation, without a doubt. Andrew Luck will take Stanford, and they're going to actually beat Oregon, I believe, in this game. I think Stanford's going to take that home crowd. Andrew Luck's going to prove to all of his doubters that he's able to play at that level, and he's going to ensure his spot as the number 1 pick overall.
Yeah, I actually have to go against it. Being an Oregon fan since middle school, actually, I love watching the Oregon Ducks play. They really just have a fast-paced offense. Their defense flies all over the field. I have so much respect for Andrew Luck, but Oregon, after losing that one game earlier in the year, they're going to go down there with nothing to lose. They really still want to get that recognition, get into a bowl game, which they will. I see the Ducks, winning well on the road. It'll definitely be a high-scoring game, but we'll see how it goes. The Ducks like to play fast, so if Stanford can control the tempo of the game, they'll have a chance. But I think Oregon is going to break it loose in the second half, win by probably 2 touchdowns. Speed kills, and their coach recruits for speed on their players. And so we'll see. It'll be definitely an interesting game for sure. And our final note to conclude the show, just a topic that's been on our mind, that we want to ask Matt, is we obviously have a few weeks to go, and Oklahoma State is undefeated, LSU is undefeated, Boise State is undefeated, and Stanford's obviously in the hunt as well. Who would you like to see in the championship game, and who would you want to win?
That's a very tough question. I do want to see LSU in the championship game. They're the number 1 team. They just beat Alabama, although it did get taken to overtime. They proved that their defense was the top, if not the best, defense in the nation. Their offense is very explosive. I like seeing LSU in that matchup, and I want Boise State to get some love. They're undefeated. I see them beating TCU this week in a critical game, and I see them winning out. If Oklahoma State slips up against Oklahoma and Boise State's the only unbeaten team remaining besides LSU, I want them to get that chance to prove themselves at the national level, but I see them falling to the tough SEC defense, so I see LSU beating Boise State in the championship game, maybe by a touchdown, maybe 10 points.
Yeah, I actually have to agree. I would love to see, I'm a big LSU fan, but most likely they'll be there unless they, slip up in a trap game, which at that point would probably be LSU Alabama. But I'd like to see LSU Boise State as well. Oregon got their shot, as you said. I think Boise State, that one bowl game against Oklahoma a few years back, pulled out the Statue of Liberty play, hook and ladder. They're going to represent the West really well, and I think Boise State really has a shot to beat them. They got arguably the best quarterback in the whole league, so we'll see how that goes. Any final thoughts as we're concluding the show?
No, just look out for another great week in football, and hopefully we'll have some good games, even though the game of the century is over. Yep,
game of the century is over. Once again, basketball starting this week. We'll be back next week to wrap up the first week of basketball games, along with the Oregon game and the other football games this week. For Matt, I'm Brendan. Thanks for watching Top 25 Live. We'll see you next week.